then press pound and then pound again. If your line is muted, press *6 to unmute. So hopefully that'll give enough information to get people coming. And we'll open our meeting. I'll say the prayer and then pledge by Commissioner Heberling. Lord, we just thank you for this day that we have, that we can get together and make decisions that will affect Fond du Lac County. And Lord, we just pray that we will make the decisions that will be most beneficial. And again, we just thank you for this opportunity. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
District 1, Commissioner Dan Dean.
Here.
District 2, Commissioner Gary Huberling.
Here.
District 3, Commissioner Joe Mara.
Here.
District 5, Commissioner Joel Wyatt.
Present.
District 4, Chairman Bob Coleman.
Here. Any additions, corrections, or deletions to the agenda? Not, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
Motion approved.
Support.
Have a motion by Commissioner Wyatt, seconded by Commissioner Heberling, that we adopt the agenda. Is there any comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed to the same. Motion carried. Any corrections to the minutes?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the minutes of September 1st, 2020.
Support.
Have a motion by Commissioner Heberling, supported by Commissioner Dean, that we approve the minutes of September 1st, 2020. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Motion carried. No correspondence or petitions or inductions that I'm aware of. Commissioners report. Commissioner Wyatt.
We'll start with, had a meeting at Speaker Township, just a normal township meeting, but they were discussing, like many other communities, the impact that wind power is making as it moves further south here. So I guess there was a group doing an exploratory report on interested parties in that area. I think it was 3 townships, and they're looking to get, I think, was it 18,000 acres? And they got back from the various people who responded a total of roughly 35,000 acres of interested parties. So the township boards are putting their heads together to figure out what their zoning ordinances need to reflect.
Might have to update them a little.
Yeah. It's boy, I tell you, it seems like you're either for it or you're against it, like many other things. And then we did have the broadband meeting last week, I think it was. A guy named, what was his name? Dan Manning from Connected Nations. So this is a nonprofit. They make their money through the Economic Development Committee. And Carl Osentowski got us in connection with him. I've got a source coming from another area down in Macomb County who's a retired guy out of DTE with their telecom, and he's familiar with this organization and speaks highly of it. So they're going to put together data that they've already collected and consider collecting additional data to see where we actually sit in terms of what's available, what infrastructure is already here, where it's possible to move forward. And most importantly, once they've got that information, we're going to consider sending out invitations to the various providers, both of the infrastructure and the aftermarket support, I guess, or after install support, and see if we can get these people to meet, communicate, and work towards, some kind of a solution. And right now too, according to Dan and some other sources, that like this is a hot time to get federal funding and private funding for broadband. I remember after 2001, after 9/11, being in the fire service, there wasn't anything we could ask for in terms of equipment and training and stuff that people weren't willing to put out after that period of time. But that went away, after a year or two. So this pandemic brings about the same sense of urgency to take advantage of the moment for the betterment of the community that we're serving. So we'll hear back from that in about probably a week and a half, I expect.
So Joel, when they get moved forward and we get broadband out in the rural district, how's that going to interlink with, like the city of Sandusky already, went ahead with ABCI.net, Carsonville's went ahead with AT. How's that all going to connect together?
Well, I would say, Nancy was there actually, I would say that was discussed, not specifically, but it was addressed about existing infrastructure already in place, what method in which to transmit this product out, whether it should be cables underground, whether it should be transmission towers or the like. And at this point, it was decided, if I got that correct, Nancy, that we should put together these players in the game and let them speak to where we're at, where we need to be. And one of the ideas was we set forth some parameters saying we would like to help, but we would like to be assured that there'll be a minimum up speed and a minimum down speed to actually be better than the standard they use right now. It's kind of low, isn't it, Nancy? The 25 down, wasn't it? And 12 up standard he spoke
That's
of?
pretty sufficient for residential.
Yeah. So that was discussed in terms of that'll be a topic of discussion once those major players get involved. Are you talking about the cost sharing?
No, I just wondered how that would all work.
Yeah.
You got ABCI.net over here, you got AT&T, because you talked about different contracts.
Right. So there's different methods of delivering the product, and there's some that we're not even aware of, I'm sure. But then there's different players involved in delivering that product, and then there's different players involved in installing the infrastructure for that product. There's a lot of moving parts to it, and right now there's an auction being held coming up to bid out. Is it through FCC regarding the ability to have that area dedicated to you? So they're actually bidding out that wire airspace, I guess, for wireless. So apparently, there's an interest in developing a wireless system, but I can't answer a question whether one way or the other, how they'll connect with like Deckerville or Sandusky, places that are already having fiber run. Seems like fiber was the preferred way, but the most costly and time
Consuming,
consuming.
labor wise, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in telecom, they have roaming, you have roaming agreements so that, if I'm on, T-Mobile and an AT&T network, they share the revenue off of my calls. Is fiber optic, is it the same way? Is there like a revenue sharing agreement where Agri Valley and
Yeah, they have what's called, what do they call it? Black line or dark line?
Black fiber.
Yeah, they
So
call
they
it
share-
dark
they all
line.
share the fiber
That's
optic.
fibers that are not lit and providing anything. And when they run these cables through, they might only be using 4% of its
Okay.
total capacity. And they do that with the expected that you'll be able to lease that stuff out.
so yeah, Agri Valley laid some coming up 25 to County Farm Road and they stopped. So like the other service providers can use that piece.
I think you are correct.
Okay.
But, what we talked about early on was, the rural community has no ability to tap into that
Yeah.
because of the expense of running that. So how can they be? And Nancy pointed out that towers would probably, I think that's where you were talking wirelessly, additional towers. That's a problem both with, it's a problem with police and fire. Their communication systems are relying on towers that are too far apart. They have to reconfigure how it's used. And of course, the major players aren't putting a lot of money into the equipment that's already attached to the towers. So that's a big component of it too. So honestly, it seemed quite overwhelming.
I'm sure.
Carl seems like a valuable resource, and with this Dan Manning getting in on it, because that's what he does. He brought up several cases of municipalities actually owning the infrastructure and leasing it out. And I thought that was a pretty interesting point in talking with another couple of members of the committee afterwards. The idea being is that, let's say, for example, municipality A buys up property, builds towers, leases the space to, viable providers of service. Or in the case of one community in Michigan, they laid all the fiber in their entire township. It was a township, right? Yeah, which is a pretty big area, but they laid fiber in the entire township. And then they charge the ISPs for the use of that. And then the community has a reliable network that's buried and safe. And they got the ISP service at a reasonable price. In fact,
I think that Dan Manning basically said the approach should be to do the research first to see what we have and what our expectations are and go from there. And that's why they were talking about getting all the ISPs input on what they have, what their thoughts are, and then basically do the initial research on what we have and kind of try to come up with a plan.
there's other states that actually, the communities have bought and paid the infrastructure for delivery. They have the ISP's bid on utilizing and providing that service, much like a garbage company would bid on providing garbage pickup for the entire community. And as an end result is the consumers pay, like $60 a month for super high speed, reliable internet that they don't have to worry about competing or switching. Whether that's good or bad, I don't know. These are mostly densely populated demographics, so they don't really comport to this rural area, but there is, places that actually have municipalities, government involved in the ownership and the subcontracting out of that delivery of that product, so.
Doesn't most cities and villages and schools have
Eventually, it's
that?
gotta happen, just like.
Well, maybe not all cities and villages, but most school districts do. They call that, what was that, the N? There's some kind of fiber optic networking that has been available for schools to take advantage of to intercommunicate with their various buildings. And that was overbuilt with the same capacity that we talked about earlier, where they've got, 84% of it being dark. And the ability to use it. When I went to Deckerville a year ago to talk with Agra Valley about that, he had mentioned, the fellow from there was mentioning about the school districts have that system in play, but it's mostly useful for the areas where the schools are located and anyone along that trunking line. So it wouldn't do any good for anyone that's, 5 miles laterally that doesn't have that going by there. But that part could possibly be used. In fact, what I thought was interesting to talk about was the fact that the schools, I'm glad we have this chance to talk, Dan, because the schools are being forced to provide education online. And one major drawback, I imagine, for you guys is people with poor internet at their home.
Correct.
Well, if taxes are captured on property for the use of the schools, and that's for everything, the infrastructure, the bringing of a curriculum, the teachers, everything, why wouldn't it also be utilized or could be utilized to provide the medium by which they
What you're speaking of, like we're providing Chromebooks and we do have hotspot capability if we get shut down again and kids are at home.
but it's poor, right? And
It's not great.
And I think the schools need to have a conversation about this isn't just a one-time pandemic. They've got to really rethink how they're.
Well, your whole economy for the future is going to depend on it.
Correct. So that being said, there isn't, let's take Sand Lake County, for example, there's not one square mile that doesn't have a user of the public school system, I would say. So I think the funding of the public school system should be utilized and considered being utilized to do a project like this as well. It might seem like a radical idea that you would, divert funding from strictly schooling, but this is a huge part of it. And I would argue that they could quite reasonably be expected to be able to use that funding for that purpose in some
Or some other
capacity.
source of funding, but
Yeah,
not necessarily. But that township you referenced, I think if it's one I'm thinking about, south of Ann Arbor, they passed a millage to put the infrastructure in.
correct. Yeah, I do believe you are correct. He said it was over that side. So. And he did mention, though, that the state of Michigan's discouraging that. I asked him, well, why would that be? And he said, we really can't figure that out either, but they think it was the lobbyists for the providers of the.
I would guess.
Yeah, isn't that something? Yeah. So when he said that, I thought, oh my gosh, the state government might be working on this and no, not at all. It was for private industry being able to capitalize on that. So that tells me that this actually might be a very good way of going about it. If private industry wants to keep us out.
Okay, thank you. Joel,
Nothing significant to report right now. Thanks.
Gary?
I have no report.
No, I'm good.
I'm good too. Okay. Is Tara on the line? I don't know if she's.
I don't think she.
I don't think she is either.
Todd is.
Close second.
Okay. Public comments. I don't know, is anybody? You don't have anybody, Nancy?
No, unless Todd wanted to say something.
Okay. Todd, are you there?
I'm just here for the resolution that's on your agenda.
Oh, okay. Appointments to standing committee, I know of none. County commissioner appoints to boards, I don't know of any. County commissioner chair appoints, I don't know. General resolution. Sun Lake County Hazard Mitigation Plan resolution.
Ready?
Do we want Todd first or after?
Todd, do you want to comment anything before I read this or after? I think the best thing, I'll read the resolution.
Yep, okay.
We'll make a motion if there's any questions.
Yep.
Whereas Sand Lake County, Michigan has experienced disasters that have damaged commercial, residential, and public properties, displaced citizens and businesses, closed streets and bridges, and presented general public health and safety conscience, and whereas Sand Lake County has prepared a hazard mitigation plan that outlines the county's options to reduce overall damage and impact from natural hazard, and whereas a hazard mitigation plan has been reviewed by county residents, businesses, owners, and federal and state and local agencies has been revised to reflect their concerns. Now, therefore, it be resolved, the Sand Lake County Hazard Mitigation Plan has hereby been adopted as an official plan by the Sand Lake County, Michigan. A hazard mitigation local planning team, LTP, is hereby established as a permanent county advisory body. The LPT will be a subcommittee of the Sand Lake County Local Emergency Planning Committee, LEPC, and function as a hazard mitigation committee. The LPT's duties shall be designed in the hazard mitigation plan. Number 3, the hazard mitigation committee is charged with supervising the implementation of the plan's recommendations within the funding limitations as provided by the Sand Lake County Board of Commissioners of other sources. Number 4, the hazard mitigation committee shall be given priority attention to action items recommended by the hazard mitigation plan as high priority. Number 5, the hazard mitigation committee facilitator shall convene with the hazard mitigation committee at least once per year. The committee shall monitor implementation of the plan. Therefore, it be further resolved that this resolution be spread upon the proceedings of the Sand Lake County Board of Commissioners this 15th day of September 2020.
Or
Do I have a motion was made by Commissioner Hebering, supported by Commissioner Dean. All those in favor say aye.
Todd might give you a little-
Discussion, please.
Todd, did you want to step in at this point in time and add anything to it or clarify or make any comment?
Yeah, sure. This here is just basically the final step of the hazard mitigation plan that we've been working on for quite some time now. And some of you have been involved in that process, working through it, a lot of township participation, city villages and so on to make this all happen. So this is the final step, and this plan is good for 5 years. So 5 years from now, we'll have to go through the same process as far as the update and all that stuff. This here was approved by FEMA. And so we are now eligible to receive, we were eligible, but this just updates our eligibility to receive hazard mitigation funds for some of the projects that were defined in the plan, of which when we did our public hearing, I gave you guys that thumb drive. It showed it as a draft plan.
Yep.
That is our final plan. Any of the changes in that were very minute, and I will get you an updated copy of that here within the next week or so. But this moves forward, and we'll just keep at it. Appreciate your support to approve the resolution.
Thank you.
Any
Todd?
more discussion?
Yeah, Todd, these committees, are these new committees or are these existing committees? Because I didn't see it in the thumb drive, any discussion of these committees. If they are new ones, why are we setting up new committees?
They are not new committees.
Okay.
These have been in place as long as I've been in the position. I'm sure they were before. The local planning team and LEPC is a group of 15 individuals, of which Commissioner Wyatt is part of that, that we meet and discuss things. The major members of this is our local fire chiefs, because they actually are more involved in the mitigation of a lot of things or see a lot of the issues that's out there as far as hazardous materials and things like that. So both these committees are already in place and have been in place.
Okay.
So they put input into this? Todd,
What was
Yeah.
that?
did they put input into this then?
The
Oh,
plan.
absolutely. Absolutely. They were big players in it. Like I said, we had representatives from all the townships that attended several meetings over the course of this last probably 18 months that we've been working on this at least. So, there has been tremendous community input along with those at our level.
Your committee list, it should include Commissioner Wyatt. It doesn't have him on the list, so you might want to update your plan accordingly. It has the previous commissioner.
Commissioner Wyatt is on our list because he is a representative of the Board of Commissioners that represents emergency management for the county. So
Yeah.
he's kind of an automatic.
Yeah, but on that thumb drive, the list that you have in the back, it doesn't have him. It has Sarkella in there.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Sarkella was on there. Yep, good catch, Joe. I'll make that.
That's why I get paid.
The big buck.
Well, $50 a pay period isn't really big anymore. It used to be big when I was 6. So.
Okay, any more discussion? If not, can we have a roll call vote?
Commissioner Heberlin,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Mara,
Yes.
Commissioner Wyatt,
Yes.
Commissioner Dean,
Yes.
and Chairman Conley.
Yes. Motion carried.
Thank you.
FA 106-20, approval of 2020 current claims.
The Satellite County Board of Commissioners hereby approve the payment of current claims for 2020 identified in the accounts payable report dated September 8, 2020 for the general bank account in the amount of $54,210.86.
I have a support.
Support.
Motion by Commissioner Heberlin, supported by Commissioner O'Mara. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say the same. Motion carried. FA 107-20, budget adoption amendments and appropriations.
The Satellite County Board of Commissioners hereby approve the following amendments, transfers, and establishes the following accounts listed below on page 4 and on top of page 5.
Motion made by Commissioner Heberlin, supported by Commissioner Dean. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Motion carried. FA 108-20, approval of additional general fund bank account checks.
The Sanilac County Board of Commissioners hereby approves a payment of additional general fund bank account checks charged to August 2020 as follows. The total is $490,113.09.
Do I have a support?
Support.
Motion by Commissioner Heberlin, support by Commissioner O'Meara. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Motion carried. FA 109-20, authorization for disposal of vehicle, Sheriff's Office.
The Sanilac County Board of Commissioners hereby authorizes the Sheriff's Office to dispose of one 2007 Ford Explorer VIN number ending in 45582 with a mileage of 195,429 miles at the Albright Auction Service, and further authorizes the proceeds to be deposited into the police vehicle line.
Motion by Commissioner Heberlin, supported by Commissioner Dean. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Motion carried. No public comment. Is there any public comments?
I have a public comment. Regarding when we dispose of vehicles or we auction off anything, and I see, it hadn't occurred to me, but it goes into the police vehicle line. Now, where I retired from, I remember that when various departments' equipment were sold off or auctioned, or it went to the general fund. And because, you know, their budget is created in such a way that it doesn't take into consideration auctioning. I wouldn't assume, I don't know if the sheriff's department does it or not, but doesn't consider through that forthcoming year whether they're going to necessarily auction off vehicles or anything, really, because they can't really bank on how much money's coming in. So the way we did it was, the way it was done, what I'm familiar with is that went to the general fund, because it wasn't something that you budgeted as an income.
Don't we generally, this money go into the equipment line, like for the equipping of the vehicles after they're purchased?
Well, it says police vehicle line, but haven't we equipped the vehicles out of different funds before?
I think
Police vehicle and
No. Most of it, I think this money goes in there, then the new vehicle gets equipped with the modifications that have to be made from that fund now.
We got one coming up on the
Yeah,
finance.
true,
meeting.
but that line is budgeted each year as part of their overall budget, right?
Right.
So I imagine, I mean, I don't doubt that it's being spent wisely,
Yeah.
but
that might be a good question during the finance meeting for Nate Smith, because he handles that over
Yeah.
there. And this particular vehicle is not going to generate a whole lot of revenue.
No,
for the fund anyway.
but because that was always a source of contention for us in the fire service was, we're selling our fire truck, why can't we have that right back into our budget? But that's not how it works. And I see it with a little bit of different set of eyes now.
So what you're saying, if I read you right, there was an established budget before the year started.
Right. Which
Knew how much they had to spend.
Yeah.
And then anything that was sold or whatever, it went back in the general fund.
Well, it's not part of a forecastable revenue stream that they can actually, I don't think that they can budget for. I wouldn't imagine. So if it gets
It
back
would end up being
in,
a wash because you have to have.
yeah, just to have a number.
I mean, you can predict anything.
Well,
It's like a bet. I mean,
And what you're saying, I just
no
want
budget's
to
a guess, educated guess, for sure.
sell off something, whoever.
unless you're not
it is.
educated, you say no.
That's an increase in their budget,
Well, let me put it this way.
not increase, but
So you've got their budget on that particular line, for example, and each year they add, request additional funds or the same funds they did last year. So maybe that budget line stays flat like this, but in the meantime, they get funds trickling in from the sales of vehicles, and it goes up and it goes up. And they might only request X amount of dollars each and every year, but they're sitting on a balance possibly that reflects years of sales being put back into it. I don't know if
You
that's.
might have someone ready to answer that question on the line now.
From a theoretical point of view, I would prefer to let them keep the proceeds because It builds equity, it builds ownership.
It'll be a wash if we have to equip a vehicle and there's not enough money in that particular fund, we'd have to supplement.
Correct, but what I'm asking is, as we went through today's budget meeting, I don't think, I don't know, are the departments looking into things like that and saying, well, you know, we could take less next year on the vehicle line or equipment line, because we do over a period of time add funding into that. Is that
A
something?
lot of it gets funded by the commissary over there too, but
Yeah.
I think we have someone ready to answer the question from the sheriff's department right now.
All right, Nate, I caught part of your conversation there in relation to the equipment. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, the proceeds from the sale.
So proceeds from the sale of the vehicles, they go back into the vehicle line. What you have to understand is over the years, for instance, you might have a 2016 through 2018 Ford Explorer that takes a certain batch of equipment, you know, with the hopes of taking that equipment and reusing it, you know, 4 years down the road. But what we've been finding is the vehicle manufacturer changes the design of the vehicle, which requires us to buy ultimately new equipment for it. So, you know, as far as an excess in equipment, we really don't have, you know, funds that we build up in there. It's not really happening. It's kind of in and out.
Well, I guess what I'm asking is, when you put forth your budget at the beginning of the year, or what have you, you've got a police vehicle line. You're expressing it right here that there's a police vehicle line, right? So what I'm saying is, when you budget for new vehicles, you're asking for that amount of money to be in that line. And then as we move through the year, and if you sell off old vehicles, is that considered the money that goes back in for the old vehicles, however much or little? Do you consider that when you evaluate your budget in the beginning? Or is that money that you pile in there, knowing that full well that you'll use it, I understand, but does that accumulate to a certain point where it might be reasonable to dial back your vehicle line?
So there's actually two vehicle lines. There's one for the purchase of the vehicles, which actually we increased, I believe, last year because the price of the vehicles went from around 29,000 up to about 36,000 over a couple of year period. Equipment's went up the same. So can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we're listening.
Okay.
Joe, you tell me, you said it could go either or, right? You could put that stuff back in the general fund. And the following year, when they want additional funds, because as Nate said, the price has gone up, you just simply ask for more. Here's the reasons why. The price for vehicles has increased 20%, blah, 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 right? So that goes up. And I think I see the reality of why one would take that for sales on any product, whether it's a copier or desks or a vehicle or whatever, and put it into the general fund, since that's the fund that disperses it through the budgeting process in the first place. Is there an advantage to doing it that way? Are we missing out on some aspect of being able to trim the budget because we're actually controlling that money and they have to ask for it on the front end?
I don't know. It seems like we're buying like 4 or 5 new vehicles a year, right? Something like that.
Right. You know, we went from where we've bought 3 and we've bought 4 to 5. It really depends on the need.
Yeah, and then we retire, you might get what, 2,000 to 3,000 or maybe 4,000 on each one of them.
Well, let me put it in a different perspective, and that's what brings it to my attention is, so for example, if I were to put in the budget that I need a new pumper truck, and let's say it's $750,000, a substantial amount of money. I get approval to buy said pumper truck. I order it, it comes in, that goes into my vehicle line, $750 to buy that pumper truck. Now I sell that pumper, the old one, and I sell it for $220,000. What would you expect that money to go? Directly into the fire department's fund if they had a vehicle line, or back to the general fund so that they could utilize it as such, so that when 5 years, and that's the difference is, you know, you might have a 5-year life expectancy as opposed to maybe 2 or 3 or whatever it is. But that puts that money in the general county's funding to be able to utilize for whatever purposes it is. And it's not just the sheriff's department, it would be any of the county's property.
Yeah, there's probably no legislation or any guidance on this, but so there's probably a lot of leeway. But I would treat that 200,000 as like a trade-in value and therefore reduce the purchase price down to 500.
Well,
Or at
but then
least
that would mean the money goes back to the county because they gave the full 750 up front in the budgeting process in the beginning. So it's typically not.
Yeah,
a
but then
trade-in.
I would only say you're only paying 5 because you get the 200, so you're only actually paying.
Well, sometimes it doesn't happen that way. It does. It's not, it may be 2 months before it's sold and it doesn't go to the, so it doesn't work necessarily like that.
I doubt that any of these transactions are material.
I don't know.
I doubt it. In your case, I think that's a material transaction, but in these cases, I think they're really not material.
Well,
I mean, like they sold one a couple weeks ago because it was rust.
yeah,
I think I'm the only person in Sand Lake County would say, hey, that looks like a good deal.
the numbers that we're talking about are small, but I'm just wondering
Yeah.
that it brought to my attention that we don't do that. We don't sell equipment here and put it back in the county's general funds. We let that department keep that. And that is an income that department realizes that's not configured into their initial budget assessments. Now, we're looking at trimming budgets right now.
But if they didn't have that income coming from that source, they would have to ask us for additional money.
No, not necessarily, no, because they asked for, let's just say it's a replacement of a copier machine at $5,000. So, Denise's office knows they need a new copy machine. She puts it in the budget for 2021 that I need a new copier machine. It's going to be roughly X amount of dollars. That money gets approved. Her budget has it. Now, halfway through the year, she gets that copier machine. She sells it for $1,000 or whatever the case is, whatever it is. That money goes in her department rather than the county general fund. And it seems to me that it should go into the county's general fund.
I don't think it makes a difference because.
Well, it might be small amount of money, but I'm just wondering if there is any advantage in having it done that way. I say that because I had that experience.
I don't think so because, I mean, in your case, everyone knows that they sold it for 200,000. So there's no secret. It's coming in.
It's being utilized.
It's like a trade-in in my view, and I would just view the cost of the new truck as 500 and the general fund has an extra 200.
I'll tell you this much though. So when I look at purchasing a new piece of equipment and I see my existing vehicle line or whatever that is, let me throw it. This has nothing to do with the sheriff's department, but let's just say whatever it is that I'm buying, and I look and I say my existing budget or my existing fund balance in this line is X amount of dollars. And I say, I know I can get X amount of dollars for a new whatever it is, I might get the better model of whatever it is because I know I've got that extra money in here. But you wouldn't have that same mindset if that money that had been generated from the sale of that item previously. And we're talking about an accumulation of funds over a period of years for selling things. And it's small potatoes, but nevertheless, you don't have that mindset because it's not reflected in your department's fund balance. Because you only have authority over your department's fund balance, and that's how you look at shopping.
I disagree. And one of the things, I think building equity in each of the departments benefits the taxpayers because, like through performance measurements or other things where people can get compensated more, they'll pay more attention. And in this case, or in your case, the guys would take better care of the truck knowing that the trade-in value is going to be higher.
That is an excellent point, Joe. And that was one of the factors that we considered when we were utilizing this equipment was the benefit that we derive on the back end is tremendous, which we never had. Yeah. So that's an excellent point. And
you build that
way in favor of that. That's a good point. Yeah.
So I'm in favor of building equity. People take ownership of this.
Do you think it translates into that?
It sure does. If people build that, they have ownership in what they're doing.
I would agree with you. I'm glad you pointed that out.
Especially if there's compensation is derived from their performance.
Yeah.
But you can look at it also, if you put it in the general fund this year, it's going to come back to them when they make the budget the next year.
Perhaps.
It will.
Well, I mean, if they ask or they request.
It could get lost in the general budget.
Oh, it definitely will. You're right.
The more specific.
When they come in for a request to equip a vehicle, they identify that account as the funding source.
Correct.
And that's the account that's accumulated from the sales of older vehicles.
But doesn't that account get replenished in a sense?
But it
every
would have to get replenished more if the money weren't sitting there to already have done it.
Right, I'm
Clearly,
already,
there's two different ways of doing it. There's benefits, I imagine, on both sides, but
I like it when each of the departments are run like a standalone business, and to the extent that they can fund their own operation, let's do it. Absolutely. And if we can give them compensation based on the performance that builds up that money, we should do that too. It's a win-win situation. Everyone wins.
Okay.
In my opinion.
I see that.
Okay. Do we need to vote on that, anything?
We need to
Or
vote.
that- that was just
a public.
Well,
That was my public comment.
That was your, okay, here we go. We don't have a closed session. Okay,
I move to adjourn.
motion by Commissioner Hebling, supported by Commissioner Wyatt, that we adjourn. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carried, adjourned.